I'll let you know.
Will I be?
Okay, we are live. Hello, it's my great pleasure today. I'm Nadia again, to meet a friend of mine and a real talented entrepreneur, which I know for a fact. Michael, Michel, how should we all address you? I call you the way I want, but what about your official pronunciation today?
It's I mean, I do not have an official because a lot of people call me Mike, but Michel is the official one. So the family calls me Michel, but the friends call me Michael. So I'm pretty used for both.
I call you Mike, and that's how I called you in the past as well. When we met, maybe our brief introduction here. Mike is the co-founder of AwayHire, which is an amazing initiative that you'll find out about in a second. But before we even talk about that, I would really love to explain how we met in the first place. So Mike and I, we met during our MBA classes that we took together. We graduated last year. And he was probably the first person that I talked to during our classes. And I hope likewise. But anyway, we kind of found out after working together during classes that we share the same perspectives when it comes to a vision of work, of efficiency, of the future, of perceiving some things in the business world and life. So to my, I was really happy to see, and it's a surprise and not really a surprise because Mike really shares the same vision as I do, that he started AwayHire a couple of months ago. So now, what is AwayHire? What's that?
So AwayHire, basically it's remote work. The main idea behind AwayHire is to work on the current technologies that we have and the solutions that are available in the market to embrace remote work. The reason why I thought remote work, not because, I mean, basically the pandemic actually supported that or helped that and proved that remote work is a solution that can work. But the reason is that how to implement remote work as a way to mitigate the risk and mitigate the financial impact of the crisis. So the idea that we agreed on with remote work with a friend of mine as well is that we're going to use the remote work to help startups, to help corporations, any organization that is willing to survive the post-pandemic situation that they're suffering from or they might suffer from by using the technology that we have, implementing a remote work framework and hiring remote employees in order to cut on other costs that they actually do not really need. And the pandemic really proved that. So the idea is that to have this army of employees that are working remotely from, I mean, of course, we know that a lot of limitation might be in place, but we work with each client individually. So the thing is that the companies that are interested in this idea, they are focused on cutting costs without cutting employees, so full-time employees. And they need the employees for scaling as well, which is an important part. So basically, what the idea is here to focus on cutting the costs, like IT equipment, like the office space, which is a huge cost on a monthly basis, and also that the running cost that comes with all of that. It comes from water, electricity, etc., food. So that's the main idea. So we want to help the startups who are actually struggling from that to survive this by implementing such a framework.
It's interesting what you're saying, and to me, it's pretty obvious that it makes sense. What worries me the most, is one certain fact here that I'm willing to share with all of you. A couple of months ago, before the pandemic, when I was already performing remote work audits, we're going to talk about that later, then I found out that really smart companies are going into not necessarily a remote first model, but at least a hybrid model because of costs, because of efficiency. And once when I performed an audit, I found out that the company pretty much wanted to expand. They were thinking about hiring 60, 70 people in different locations. And they thought, hey, we will have to change our offices. But it turned out that 50% of the workspace is empty on a daily basis because people already had this working schedule that was flexible. So it turned out that the business case was that investing in office space, in changing it, right, that would be tons and tons of money spent in an unnecessary way. And I remember that I made a statement about that. But nobody really thought about it, you know? And I see that when the pandemic happened, I read this, that was really loud in the beginning of April. I read this Gartner report in the US where over 70% of CFOs said, hey, over 70% said that, yeah, we see that office spaces are something that generates so many costs, which is something that we will be willing to cut. And then what started worrying me the most is, why are we so reactive instead of being proactive? Because, and I also see it a lot with HR and with our perception. When I observe LinkedIn a lot, we start saying, when will we go back to normal? Or we are going back to offices right now. How is it going to be? I think we are still living in the past instead of starting to think proactively what the future is going to bring and draw consequences.
Absolutely.
Based on what happened. Isn't it that way that we are lacking this? What's your opinion?
I absolutely agree with you. And I hear that a lot from friends who own their own companies, or colleagues who are also willing to go back to the office, or not willing to go back to the office. So I hear that a lot. But the thing is that we have a new normal, let's say. But I'm not talking about the pandemic. The pandemic will eventually will not stay forever. But the thing is that we have a way of work that will stay forever. Especially for a lot of people who have kids, and the struggle is really big, or they might also be living in a place with not very well serviced in terms of transportation, infrastructure, etc. So they have their houses in the countryside, and they would like to still stay away from the city. So the idea is that the idea that we're talking about is that we need to think about how we can implement that. The positives are really obvious, and the negatives are also there for remote work. A lot of people are afraid to go for remote work because not many actually implemented such a way of working. And not many of the companies out there, they have the courage to cut the traditional way of working, since it's been there for years, and go remote out at once. So that was like one of the main things that people are scared. There's no real framework. There's no real expert in the market. There's no leader in the market that can actually go and say, okay, let's implement that. They follow this structure, so we see that it works.
And that's a great thing that you said, and that's something that I'm trying to challenge all the time. Is we tend to follow. We tend to follow. And I had many clients that reached out to me saying, hey, is there like a framework that we can implement? Somebody who's done that already, we can implement one-to-one. The problem is that every company has its own structure, its own culture, its own business case. So I think before even starting to rush into something, which is maybe fashion, and the topic of our conversation today is remote work is not a buzzword. It has become a buzzword. And I remember when all this started, the pandemic, when I talked about remote work before, it was something interesting, but not really for many companies. Then it started and everybody was into it. And these questions, okay, hey guys, do you know how to do this? How have you done this? How have you done that? And I don't think that we analyze enough what's happening internally, and we don't start with that's this famous quote, start with the why. Why do we want to do? And many companies don't do that. They just follow, they just rush into some patterns without analyzing the particular business case. And I think it's a huge problem, because the one-size-fits-all policy here is not going to be applicable, right? You're an
Absolutely.
auditor. You know best, right?
Exactly. There's no one way to do it. That's a fact. And for one person it might work, for another it might not work. And the thing that we also need to take into consideration, employees themselves, are they ready to actually be working from home on a full-time basis? So the thing is a little bit wider than also just to put it from the corporate side or from the startup side. So the thing is that you also need to consider who you have inside the corporation. Mostly the big corporations, they are like struggling with that because they are huge. To have this implemented, it will take years. And I see some of them, they're just starting to follow slowly with some departments, with some teams, like for example with the IT teams, because they're mostly independent and they have their tasks and they have their agile calls, etc. So they can do that also remotely. So, but I know also the struggle is real for others who they need daily contact, or for example, who are in daily touch with clients. So that's going to be difficult. So obviously it depends. It depends on the business, depends on the infrastructure of the company, the type of the business. So yeah, I absolutely agree with you on that as well.
Well, that's why I really like studying with you. Another hint here. Yeah, it was either you that would say something to challenge what was being said in the classroom. That's how it was usually. So
that's how it was.
that was so much fun. It was really so much fun.
I agree.
Okay. Maybe we're gonna try to play fortune tellers right now, a bit, or maybe not. Some questions that I have for you, and something that I would like to elaborate on myself as well. I already have my own thoughts about it, what the post-pandemic job market will look like. Maybe I'm going to share the job market perspective, taking into account whom we will be willing to hire. Maybe you could tell me a bit how you see it from a business perspective. What do you think is going to change? What is changing already?
What is changing already, and it's been before the pandemic, actually, the automation. So I think that's going to continue to be the trend. So automation, cutting off many jobs and replace it by robots or by programs. So that's going to stay there, I think, because if a robot can do it, so there's no need for a person who can be affected, for example, by a pandemic, or can be affected by working day or night. So the robot is there for 24 hours. So that's number one. So I think that will not change. Actually, it will be kind of an encouragement for that to continue. The second thing, I think there will be a shift in terms of where the employees are needed. So, for example, we can see now that in terms of many financial institutes, they were always doing this kind of stress testing. No one really knew what is stress testing. We're just like wasting some resources there. So we need to test certain scenarios, like a typhoon, like a pandemic, and to see how the organization might survive that. Now it all makes sense. And I think now we see what everyone was talking about, because our memory is short, and all of the let's say the basis behind the testing, the crisis management is years old. So even from simple things that might happen, like electricity cut down or whatever. So it can happen. So I think that part will be also booming in terms of especially big corporations, that they need to mitigate any potential risk that might occur that they would rather not have any control over it. So how to survive, to have a certain amount of liquidity as well. Finance as well, and the treasury part as well will be still there, and it will be booming as well. In terms of other jobs, architecture, I think, and interior designers, they will also have their own part, the good part of it, because many people, they are working from home already, or will be willing to work from home in the future. So they will need to design a certain way for their office at home. The job market will change dramatically in terms of what we are looking for, and in terms of outsourcing. So outsourcing was the trend 10, 12 years ago. Yeah. Everyone was outsourcing to cheaper countries. I think that will be limited, and I think especially taking into consideration remote work. So my prediction is that remote work will take over outsourcing. Because why would you need to outsource if you can hire the employees remotely and they can still be in other countries, in their home countries, and you do not have to bother much about taking control of the activities or let's say monitoring the activities of the other company that you outsource your activity to. So you still have control over your own, let's say, activity that you want to have it done in a cheaper way. And you will still have that, and you will still have the control over your employees who are in a different country.
Yeah, I'm trying to stay cold-blooded, but the truth is here that I'm in the middle of a dramatic thunderstorm. So you're not moving, by the way, so I don't know what happened on that end, but that's okay.
I'll try to.
Yeah, it's really unexpected. Like literally, now you disappeared. You're going to go back in a second. Literally a couple of hours ago, the weather here was really amazing. Now I'm in the middle of really the center of a thunderstorm. But that's okay. That's okay. I'm not charging my laptop, so most probably nothing's going to hit me here. So I'm safe. No worries on that. Anyway, in this scenario, I would like to add my few cents as well. Probably hear the thunderstorm.
Yeah, yes, I can hear that, and I'm trying to fix my cam as well, so you can go ahead.
No worries, no worries. Do whatever you need to do, and I'm just going to move on. So you said it from the business perspective a bit, and I'm going to say it in terms of what will the post-pandemic job market look like when it comes to hiring, really. So what Mike mentioned, because he disappeared for a few moments right now, what Mike mentioned now is going to be automation. Robots, automation. I agree, definitely. That's something that we've seen before, and AI and all this all together. That's the reason why I say that the response of people today is going to be competencies. We will evaluate dramatically what we can do, what added value we are bringing into a certain company. Meaning, before it was this way that we hired per position, per title. We hired per title. We looked at somebody's past experience in the majority of cases, like, okay, you worked for the Big Four, you worked in this kind of corporation. Hey, for sure, you're a great expert. Today, I don't think that this will matter that much. What's going to matter is going to be the skill. What can you do? What's your added value? And also, that's going to be really a very tough task for many people, because some industries had to shut down, some industries let people go. So we will have to really evaluate ourselves and think of a plan B. That's why I remember a couple of weeks ago, I was sharing this post on LinkedIn about having 2 or more careers, see? And I always said that was something I believed in, but something that was a really very controversial topic when you were going on these recruitment, these interviews with HR, where they really asked you to show your career path. Where are you aiming? Where are you going? Trying to see the logic behind everything you do. If you did something completely different, like I would say, for example, okay, I am remote work advocate. I perform remote work audits, right? I implement remote work in companies. That's something that is expected. I originate from recruitment. Yes. But then on the other hand, something that you don't know about me, well, some of you maybe do, but many of you don't, is that for years and years and years, I've been working as a translator and an interpreter in different countries, which makes me feel in this situation a bit more safe, knowing that, okay, if I was only in recruitment full-time in a certain company, and I knew that suddenly budgets are being cut, I know I always have a different plan. I also have a different skill. Okay, now it's getting worse. Thunderstorm, but really, I'm okay. No, I'm not scared of thunderstorms. I'm just scared of the connection, but that's all right. That's all right. Fine is fine. Yeah, so, and that's what I'm saying, that many people didn't think about it. They didn't have the opportunity. They were focused on one thing only. I can only do one thing, and I never look to the side thinking what else I could be great at. And I try to explain people today that maybe when you worked with customer service, there are people who work with customer service, but for example, they're fluent in English and they really are analytical when it comes to data and things like that. Maybe they can be a virtual assistant. They can look for a totally different opportunity. And I think what's going to matter today is the perspective that you bring, that you were able to multitask, that you have these broad experiences. And I think that companies will look at people in terms of smart companies, hopefully all of them. But today I see this tendency with smart companies that they will want to hire people for getting things done. So efficiency, task-based, broad perspective, people who are able to jump into different situations, different scenarios, and their added value is so high for the business case that it's just going to be a good choice to hire them. And it's our job today to reevaluate ourselves, especially all the people who have lost their jobs right now, and think about it. Which added value I am going to bring to this company, what I can do, why should you hire me, why can I go a different direction?
I absolutely agree with you. And actually, I would add something that Elon Musk recently said, that he said, like, he doesn't believe the university degree add anything to the workspace.
Yeah.
So basically, he said, like, what university is a time where you have fun, and then what you add to the workspace is your skills. So the skills that you have, your character, your communication, your background. So everything else actually adds to the workspace. But the degree, we all also partially know it, that the degree is a theoretical part that we do not always relate to that. So even at the work, during work or whatever we are doing to add a certain value, I do not believe it as well that a university degree or whatever you took during the 4 years add that much of a value to the business case.
Yeah. And I think it's also a terrible situation, because I remember myself that I graduated from law school. I was 1 year before my bar exam that I was supposed to take, and I quit completely because I thought that wasn't for me. But the problem was that it needed a lot of courage. I didn't really have a plan B, but I just thought that, oh, let's just go for it. Let's see what happens. But that's me. That was pretty risky at that time. But anyway, the problem was that everybody put me in a certain box. You were in law school, you are going to be a lawyer. That's what you're going to do. The problem is that when you're 18 years old and you decide to go to university, there is absolutely no chance that you know who you want to be in life in most cases. Okay? That's what happens.
Agree. And and that's a bigger topic as well. I mean, if you want to go through it, but then maybe we can have another go at it, because the educational system affects that. So it plays a huge role in that. So I do not blame. I do not blame my 18-year self or choosing finance to study or to go after accounting and finance. For me, I'm still doing mostly my work over in that actually sector, but still I did not let that define me as well. So I agree, but the thing is also, when I remember, like when I was 18, I did not really know what I want to study, and that's a fact.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's a bigger topic, I would say. It's obviously we need to work on ourselves and not take everything the way they are. So not to box yourself and say like, okay, I am in this category and I'm gonna do this and that after I graduate because that's my limit. So absolutely agree with you on that, and I salute you for the switch that you made from that.
Yeah, no, you know what? I say the thing that I'm scared of the most in life is to regret that you haven't done things. Many people say
absolutely.
That. Yeah, and I say that too. And I mean, it was scary. It was a bit scary today when I look back. It gives me goosebumps, but it was right to do so. And that's a moment that we are all facing today, especially the terrible economic impact that we see, because no matter what people are saying on different channels, different social media, I see, hey, some say that next year we're going to see this huge jump, that everything's going to be even better than it was before. Well, the problem is that we have absolutely no idea. See, it's this way that when you have this question, when you sometimes have job interviews, which is a stupid, terrible question that I despise with all myself, where do you see yourself in 5 years? All the people that answered that a year ago or 5 years ago were mistaken, okay? So that's why it doesn't make any sense. The thing is that today we are all affected in a way with the huge economic impact that the pandemic caused. So now I see the situation that many businesses are cutting costs. but they are either cutting costs in a smart way or an easy way. So I've seen companies cutting employees' benefits completely, cutting bonuses. I've seen that. But then on the other hand, I've seen CEOs and the management keeping their salary on the same level, but trying to cut everything that the people are getting.
Yeah.
Exactly. I saw companies firing managers, like really because they were high cost. So they only look at the cost. Or I saw companies firing people, like really people who did all the operational stuff. The problem is that, again, I believe for many companies, we don't take into account the added value. We don't take into account the performance, but we take into account the title, the position, and the cost that we see in Excel. Isn't it that way? And is it the right or wrong approach? I think there's more to it.
It is not the right approach, but I see the background from where they come to such a decision. I think there's a bigger impact for the companies who actually fired employees during this crisis, especially if they were not really struggling financially. It's like reputational loss. I mean, I'm aware of many big corporations that they let employees go, and the reputation that they lost is huge. And also some startups that they were actually starting to have an impact on the European market, and they did something similar. It's not the right way to do it. Now, I agree some positions might be, let's put it this way, that it's nice to have. So they might let some people go, and I would understand that if the company was struggling to pay the salaries. But again, this is where they need to be smart and they need to think about it. So if the situation happens where you really need to cut some costs, so I believe and I know and I'm aware of some companies, corporations, startups, where the owners or CEOs, they cut their salaries before they cut the salaries of the other employees. Because as the head of a business, as the head of a corporation, who is actually making this corporation do the daily job and be successful? It is the people who are at the operational level. So again, and those people as well, they talk. Those people are aware of the market, and it's really hard to mitigate the reputational loss behind such activities. Like if you just cut without thinking, because you need to cut or because you don't need to cut, I think it has a bigger impact, and the impact will not be seen now, and the impact will be seen later, especially that the market now is full of really good talents that they were unfortunately fired for a valid or not valid reason. So I know also like some people use this pandemic as a reason to fire. Yeah, so that's also a sad part of it.
Yeah, I think so too. You know, which leads me to our next, maybe not question, but discussion concerning the fact what Facebook did a couple of weeks ago, announcing that everybody who is going to move out of the San Francisco Bay Area is going to have the salary cut by half.
Yeah.
So I will say something to it from my perspective, because remote work can be an optimal business model. We'll talk about it why. So the approach of Facebook, CEO of Facebook, saying this, the way he did it, in my opinion, was wrong, was not right. You're not supposed to communicate it this way. The communication process failed totally, and that's not what we have in mind. Myself saying remote work can be an optimal business model, focusing on hiring. I understand that the aim is to hire people from different markets. But when I do recruitment strategies for remote companies that I work with right now, is I'm trying to choose the optimal hiring solution. Meaning, if you are looking for a software developer for a random technology, you don't necessarily have to target London, or you have to target New York, or you have to target San Francisco.
Exactly.
If you're remote. Exactly. So here you can take a look at different talent pools where you can pay more than the market average, but still less than those other pricey locations. Whereas, for example, exactly. And that's the smart way of cutting costs, right? Getting back into the subject, how can we do it a smart way? But then and again, when you need a person who you want to be your CTO or your CFO, who needs to know the industry very well, then this is this kind of position where you need to go for absolutely top of the top, and you are aware you have to pay a very high salary. You can't cut costs here. But again, if you're looking for people with some skills that are where there are many, either on the local market or remote market, again, you can do it a smart way. You can get an opportunity, see, and that's how you can save a lot, only when you're hiring people by the right approach, by finding people on these markets where it makes the most sense for you to get the best from the local market, the certain market that you are targeting, and then to create this transparent model. And that's how you save money, you make people happy, and you broaden your horizons because you're getting multicultural, right?
Yeah. The thing is that there's also like a problem, I believe, in the hiring process. So this might reflect on why they do not hire remotely, or they say like, okay, remote work does not work for us, for a simple fact that they do not trust the employee, or they do not trust this person. That's I would say the main reason that this person would do the job remotely the same way that he would do it if he was in the office. Now, the thing is that what I believe, if it's a successful recruitment and the employee was hired, if you trust the employee to be in your organization, you should trust him enough that he can work remotely. So the thing is that why we have this trust issue, and again, we have the multiple tools that we have, or also in the contract, when the person is signing the contract, that the performance matters. So if the performance of the remote employee is actually not as expected, doesn't mean that this person in the office will be performing as expected. So I believe that this is the thing with the hiring. So they should definitely hire the right person. They should definitely work more on hiring the right person who can fit in the organization and the atmosphere within the organization. And then this person can be trusted wherever he is or she is. So that's also one of the main obstacles that we have.
Exactly. So we have a problem both ways. One hand, we have transition from on-site to remote, and this way of thinking. I recently came across this opinion, which I really,
I can hear it, yeah.
Yeah. So well, anyway, I recently came across this opinion, and I can't agree with it more than I do, which is that we are so reluctant to this, and we still say, oh, it's a kind of weird approach, because we are, not everybody, but we don't have enough competencies to measure performance. We think that if we are in an office, we see people working at their desk, somebody comes at a certain time, somebody leaves, then that's all we need to monitor and supervise. The problem is that we don't hire people taking into account getting things done, what the plan is for hiring, what the business case is, why we need that certain person in an organization. When I was hiring people, it was usually, yeah, let's talk about the company, let's talk about benefits, what we have, what you can give you. But I always ask a question to every candidate for most companies that I was working with. What will you bring to my company? What is the thing that you would do? What do you see needs to be challenged here? What's your opinion on this? Yeah. Sometimes I even did it this way, that with C-level, I always would sign NDAs so that they dig into some data or some information, and they say, hey, that's my plan. Within 1, 3, 6 months, I'm going to deliver it this and that way. You can expect your return on investment by hiring me to this and that extent, which is now clear. The problem is that we don't really think that way. And I've experienced this many times, that we make decisions on hiring people, but in the end, it turns out that if we actually never made this decision to hire a certain person, we could give a little bit of more work to one of our employees who's satisfied with what he's doing right now, and pay a little bit more money, and he would deliver like crazy, and he would feel fulfilled professionally, right? So that's a problem. I think that we don't really know exactly what we need to deliver, who is responsible for what. I think that we are lacking ownership a bit, especially in bigger corporations.
Ownership and collaboration, I would say, between the recruitment or HR and the rest of the business. So basically, if you're talking about linking that HR as a business partner, it should be definitely people with a certain background in HR that they can easily link with other parts of the business. So you're talking about finance, linking it to HR. And I believe that someone from finance or with a background in finance should understand what HR is doing and vice versa. Yeah. So they can have the link. Otherwise, both are on different planets and it will never work.
They are. And, you know, my business partner with Remote School, which is my initiative for the Polish market, which is an online, so to say, platform, online trainings for companies. She said that a couple of months ago, she had this training on site with HR departments. And she asked this question. So who of you would like to become an HR business partner? Everybody. So she said, okay, so now a question to you. Who of you has recently spoken to the management? Well, out of 60, 70 people, probably 4 or 5. Okay. Yeah. So now tell me, an HR business partner, what is the most important word? And everybody said partner. And she said, no, you see, it's business. So, and that's the problem that we have. And then see, when I observe these, and many companies reached out to me, many HR departments when the pandemic started. Hey, Nadia, how can we motivate our remote employees right now? I said, listen, you're asking me in nice words. I put that in nice words. You're asking me a really silly question. I am asking you, what is the business context? If you believe that your people are not motivated, my question is, were they motivated before? My question is, exactly. Yeah. How do you measure motivation? And number 3, if you are sure that they're not motivated, what is the reason? If you're firing people like crazy right now, everybody is in fear. They got no coaching information whatsoever that they're going to work from home, how it's going to look. Or maybe they're overwhelmed because they're stressed that they will get sick. Maybe they have families at home. They don't know how to handle it. I don't know what the reason for lack of motivation is. And again, that's what you're saying, that sometimes companies, HR departments and finance, they're both living on different planets. Or I heard this information like, okay, so previously when I talked about remote work, okay, yes, so remote work, candidates want remote work and we have it as a benefit. I say remote work is not a benefit. Remote work is a business model, for goodness sake, right? And that's true because we have employees involved, we have candidates involved, and we have the management and the business, the entire business involved in it, and everybody's the beneficiary if we do it right.
Exactly, and I think that brings me back to a link that I shared with you recently about the German market. So what the German government actually announced, that the remote work is the right the employee has the right to work remotely from home. No, I mean, as long as he wants and as long as she wants. So the thing is that it is something that is evolving still, and the same with HR. The HR is always one step behind, unfortunately, because any business is constantly evolving, and HR is trying to pick up the pace. But it's rare to see that HR is actually on the same level as the business. Both are. I saw some examples where HR actually were doing a great job in some companies, but I know that it's mostly a struggle. And I know that's also the opinion of many people who work in other sector than the HR. So they say always the HR is kind of a little bit behind, or they do not take into consideration what's happening in the business.
Yeah, because I think that the problem is that, I mean, I don't want anybody here to get us wrong and to get me wrong here, is that we should not care about people. We should care for people by all means. But I think that what we've experienced on the market recently is a huge misunderstanding. When I see, and I'm going to say it again, how can we ask people to work for us by offering them a free banana on Wednesdays? Something is totally wrong here. This is like, you see, and then they keep competing with one another, you know, with these benefits. Like, okay, here you're going to have fruit on Wednesdays, but then you're going to have a happy hour with beer on Fridays.
Yeah,
I understand this, but we are not in the kindergarten, right? We should understand what the purpose is for us to join a company, what we want to do together, what we want to deliver. have this professional fulfillment. HR is sometimes unable to communicate what's going to be in it for you, what is expected, instead of just delivering some operational tasks, right?
Yeah.
And this is the problem. And we keep competing. And I think that it shifted the wrong way for both sides, because on one hand, then companies say, hey, we're going to give you free bananas. And then candidates say, and they would say it to me too. And I experienced that. I experienced this a lot, that I would get questions, okay, but I'm taking part in 2 recruitment processes. And in this recruitment process, they told me that we have happy hour with pizza on Thursdays, and on Wednesdays we have oranges, but the other company is not really offering this, so I'm going for these benefits. What is wrong? Something's wrong here. And remote work challenges it, because we really look for purpose. When we hire the right people, we hire doers who understand what I am here for. What is my mission here? What am I supposed to deliver, right? Task by task. So let's pay this person a good salary. They're going to deliver, yeah? And we have methods to evaluate the culture fit, whether somebody fits into the culture, whether the person shares the same values, if this person is a top performer, and get things done, instead of offering you fruit to join the company.
Yeah, and that would probably, I mean, that is the reason behind the high amount of people leaving their jobs, or let's say job hopping, having this, they're always trying to find the good deal for them, rather than to focus where would they fit and where would they stay for a longer period. Even like when you talk about money, they always try like a low amount of increase, money like salary increase is enough for them to just jump to another place. And the thing is that the atmosphere, the culture, the values of the company, I do not think it's took into consideration, and that's a problem with the recruitment as well. So people are always, I mean, even like personally, everyone is trying to get the best deal for themselves. Yeah. So I can understand that part. But the thing is whether it's sustainable. So if this good deal that you think, can you stay there like for 5, 6, 10, 15 years? Or is it like just like 1 year so you can try, or you can get the benefits that you always wanted, and then just jump into another place to try again? So that's the thing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So when should we start modifying what we have? When should we start auditing? Well, I say now.
It's a constant thing. It's a constant thing. So it definitely now, and it should be yesterday. It should have been yesterday and tomorrow as well. So the thing is, it's always good to check on your processes to see whether they are still fit, whether your policies still reflect the current situation. So many things should be checked on a annual, or let's say a regular basis. So certain activities, for example, if you have the remote work, if you have the HR topics, those are really critical. This is like mainly your people doing the job, doing the things that they actually have to do, and whether to see if they are doing it properly or not, what can be changed, what can be or what can stay the same. So when it comes to audit, it's a constant topic. It's a constant thing, whether it's an obligation by the government, so it's a mandatory thing that you need to do, or you need to have your audit team, you need to have a, let's say, external auditor, or whether you are still not on that level, so it's a private company. It's always good to have an audit. It's a third eye, let's put it this way. So a third eye that's coming and checking your processes, checking your financial or operational status, and giving an opinion or recommendation, raising red flags as well. And it's always good. That means that other people can see something wrong and you can always work on it. So it's definitely a constant thing. Yeah.
And I think it's also about constant improvement, because the response that I completely disagree with is, we've always done it that way. It's good as it is. We don't need to change anything, because now the thing that I'm scared of the most, really. First, we rushed into this remote work, not really remote work, forced work.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. We rushed into it. Everybody was stressed out. Everybody was scared, right? So now we kind of have some things under control, better or worse, after these 3 months. So I'm just scared that right now many companies and especially HR departments will start saying, we got it. We got it. But the truth is that you don't really know because you haven't checked, you haven't measured. That was a situation concerning a certain crisis that we had right now. I mean, and we are still facing. And it does not mean that what you have today is going to be scalable in any way. And it's still emergency. It's still an emergency setup.
Yeah.
But exactly, it's still not transparent. So I remember questions popping up like, so what should we do now with the recruitment process? What should we do since people can't come to the office? I don't understand why we should be inviting people to the office in the first place for a first interview. It's nonsense. It's nonsense. It's waste everybody's time. And I always say, if we do that, I'm going to say a bit about recruitment. If you think about it, how much money it really costs you sometimes, yeah? Now people say, okay, we're going to do this remotely. We're going to do the hiring process, but maybe the recruitment process remotely. That's fine. So we have somebody here. We have this person. The person joins for a 30-minute conversation online. That's fine. We feedback. We see the video. If they agree to do recordings, that's fine. We can send it to a manager. Otherwise, we have these different steps of the recruitment process. The truth is that it costs us a huge amount of money, especially if we keep inviting people, keep engaging our managers. All these hours cost so much money. It turns out, and then you also make a wrong hire sometimes.
Yeah.
It is thousands and thousands and thousands, right? Whatever currency we're talking about. So
yeah.
And then I'm just worried that we go back to the office and we're going to say, hey, we have this emergency setup for emergency times, and that's fine, but we are going back to what happened before. Or, oh yeah, people know they've worked from home before. If it happens again, they go and work from home again. But that's not the deal, because it's not supposed to be an obstacle. The thing is of giving a choice, giving our people a choice today so that they can combine their life, they can combine work and choose the best model for them to thrive in the working environment.
Yeah, I agree. The thing is as well, when it comes to the audit, I think it's a big word, or it's a word that many people are scared of, especially when they're being audited.
Oh, yeah.
So the thing is, like, this also needs a culture. It needs a culture where you should be ready to be criticized, challenged the way that you're doing things, and you should accept it. You should, of course, defend it if you think or believe it's the right thing, but you also should have, let's say, an open mind of improving or changing things. So that's the fact as well. That why we audit. The basic thing behind audit is just to make sure that things are done properly, and we don't have any risk, or the risk is mitigated somehow if there is a risk. So the reason is always, after all, the health of the business. So it should be a healthy business. So the audit is not might be scary for some people, but it should definitely be done, and people should be more open when it comes to audit.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
We actually have a question here. As someone who has had a lot of interactions with remote workers, do you think that office spaces such as those offered by WeWork will be in higher demand because of the remote work trend? I say yes. What about you?
I mean, it depends. I would say yes. Yeah, but also it depends on the situation and on the country, I think. I mean, taking into consideration, for example, Poland, I still doubt that it will be on that level. Probably like bigger cities like London, New York, etc., where people live in a smaller places, so they have tiny apartments or tiny flats. So that might be definitely something to consider. Yeah.
I mean, I see today many remote companies are giving this as a benefit. Well, as a benefit to their employees, saying, okay, especially to digital nomads also who work and travel at the same time, but also people who work in different cities. And then these co-working spaces, they create, so to say, hubs. So you may identify an amazing talent pool, for example, for customer service with a certain language in a certain country, and they all work remotely. So they can go to this co-working space, right, and feel a team as well, also in person. So that's something that that definitely that is being considered today. And also one more thing, when I do these talent pool evaluations, then I also see a lot that sometimes it's a crucial thing that people are able to go get out of their house sometimes where the conditions to work are not too good. Not everybody has a separate office space, right? So I think companies are also starting to give this as a choice. So you can either get funds in the beginning to create your office at home, to buy some equipment, or you can get this this bonus up front to choose a chain of a co-work. Exactly. So from my perspective, also for young companies, I mean, for startups that are starting to operate today, for me, since I opened a startup myself also 6 months ago, but that's a different story. It's also about human resources, of course, but it's more, it's a different story. I'm not going to I'm going to do it another time. But anyway, that's a great idea, especially that the team is also remote. Obviously, how could it be any different? But then having this co-working space every once in a while allows us to meet at a certain spot, talk together, have these interactions, and we don't have to pay that much again for office spaces.
Yeah. In
different locations. So
that's a great point, actually. Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, but also need to consider like some let's say some jobs they need, or you should be behind, let's say, a secure door, so privacy, or depends on what kind of information or what kind of job you're doing. So you should not be exposed to let's say people who are not working in the same organization.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Okay. Maybe some words to finish. Is remote work a buzzword? Yes, no. Why should we dig into it deeper?
Dig deeper because it's gonna be a key word in reviving the economy. Reviving the economy means people have more time. They cut the time and the cost on commuting, on certain, let's say, retail shops that they used to have just because they were going to the office, which means that they can travel more, they can spend more time with their families, etc. So I think remote work is here to stay, and we're going to see more of it in the future.
Yeah, and I'm going to add my few cents again. Remote work is a state of mind. If you are proactive, if you see the possibilities that life offers, a different business model offers, what's in it for you, I say at least check it out, at least audit your organization, audit yourself, audit your, as much as scary as it may sound with auditing, but audit is necessary. Mike knows it best. Well, anyway, check out yourself, what you do, what your skills are really, how you can contribute to a certain organization. If it's freelancing, if it's full-time, that really doesn't matter. And companies really evaluate where you are today so that you give yourself the choice what you want to do and answer the why. If you're willing to get into this business model of having this mixed remote work solution, maybe be a remote first, but unless you check it out, you will never know. So let's not be followers, let's be leaders, okay? Thank you so much for watching today. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or Mike anytime. You can find us LinkedIn, Facebook. That was a multi-stream. And my thunderstorm's over.
Just with the call, right?
Exactly. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.